this video we'll be looking at environment and sustainable development. Okay, after studying this chapter, learners will be able to understand the concept of environment, analyze the causes and effects of environmental degradation and resource depletion, understand the nature of environmental challenges facing India, relate environmental issues to the larger context of the sustainable development. Okay, so in this chapter, through this chapter, we'll be dealing with majorly three parts. Okay, we have to first understand the significance of the contribution of environment to the economic development. With this in mind, this chapter will be divided into three sections. First part deals with functions and roles of the environment. The second section discusses the state of India's environment, and the third section deals with the steps and strategies to achieve sustainable development. Okay, so we'll look at the first step: environment definition and functions. So environment is defined as a total planetary inheritance and totality of all resources. It includes biotic as well as abiotic resources. So biotics are basically the living elements, like plants, forest, animals, fisheries, etc. Okay, and on the abiotic factor we have rocks, mountains, air, water, land, all these elements. These both things constitute the environment. Okay, functions of the environment. The environment performs four vital functions. First one, it supplies resources. Resources here include both renewable and non-renewable resources. For those which can be used without possibility of resource becoming depleted or finished or exhausted. That is, a continuous supply of resource remains available. So examples of renewable resources are the trees in the forest and the fishes in the ocean. Now we have non-renewable resources, on the other hand, are those which are exhausted with extraction and use. For example, fossil fuel. It assimilates waste. It sustains life by providing genetic and biodiversity, and it also provides aesthetic services like scenery. It is another aspect of environment. Okay, environment is able to perform these functions without any interruption as long as the demand of these functions are within the carrying capacity. Okay, now we need to understand what is this carrying capacity. This implies that the resource extraction is not above the rate of regeneration of the resource, and the waste generated are within the assimilating capacity of the environment. When this is not so, the environment fails to perform its third and vital function of life sustenance, and this results in environmental crisis. This is a situation today all over the world. The rising population of the developing countries and the affluent consumption and production standards of the developed world have placed a huge stress on the environment in terms of its first two functions. Many resources have become extinct and the waste generated are beyond the absorptive capacity. This cannot be absorbed, this cannot be taken back by the environment. Absorptive capacity means the ability of the environment to absorb degradation. The result, we are today at the threshold of environmental crisis. The past development has polluted, dried up rivers and other aquifers, making water an economic good. Besides, the intensive and extensive extraction of both renewable and non-renewable resources has exhausted some of these resources as well, vital resources, and we are compelled to spend huge amounts of technology and research to explore new resources. Okay. And to make matters worse, global environmental issues such as global warming and ozone depletion also contribute to the increased financial commitments for the government. Okay, thus it is clear that the opportunity cost and negative environmental impacts are high. Okay, now population explosion, we're talking about and the advent of industrialization. Okay, but with population explosion and with the advent of industrial revolution to meet the growing needs of the expanding population, things changed. The result was that demand for resources for both production and consumption went beyond the rate of regeneration of the resources. The pressure of the absorptive capacity of the environment increased tremendously. With more greed, with the rapid industrialization, the resources were exploited. So more land area was put into farming. More land area was taken over. More forest area was taken over to build factories, and which in turn produced harmful chemicals to the environment. These all chemicals cannot be neutralized by the atmosphere, so that created a stress in the environment. So the second aspect, that is, we are looking at the state of India's environment. Okay, now this paragraph is very important to understand the resources that we have. Okay, and how we are looking into it, or what is our stand on it. India has abundant natural resources in terms of rich quality of soil, hundreds of rivers and tributaries, lush green forest, plenty of mineral deposits beneath the land surface, vast stretch of Indian Ocean, ranges of mountains, etc. Black soil of the Deccan Plateau is particularly suitable for cultivation of cotton, leading to concentration of textile industries in this region. Indo-Gangetic plains spread from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal are one of the most fertile, intensively cultivated and densely populated regions in the world. Okay, India's forests, though unevenly distributed, provide green cover to a majority of its population and natural cover for its wildlife. Large deposits of iron ore, coal, and natural gas are found in the country. Now we will look at on a world scale what is our position. India accounts to nearly 8% of the world total iron ore reserves. Bauxite, copper, chromate, diamonds, gold, lead, lignite, manganese, zinc, uranium, etc. are also available in different parts of the country. However, the developmental activities in India have resulted in pressure to its finite natural resources. Okay. The threat of India's environment poses a dichotomy. The threat of poverty-induced environmental degradation and at the same time threat of pollution from affluence of rapidly growing industrial sector. Okay, we have seen, although we were growing in an industrial sector, we could not recover from the poverty also. The vast majority of population are still in the below poverty line. Okay, and various types of pollutions are also in the country. The priority issues identified are the land degradation, biodiversity loss, air pollution with special reference to vehicular pollution in urban cities, management of fresh water, solid waste management. Land in India suffers from varying degrees and types of degradation, seemingly mainly from unstable use of inappropriate management practices. Okay, some of the factors responsible for land degradation are loss of vegetation occurring due to deforestation, unsustainable fuel, wood and fodder extraction, shifting cultivation, encroachment into forest lands, forest fires and overgrazing, non-adoption of inadequate soil conservation measures, improper crop rotation, indiscriminate use of agrochemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides, improper planning and management of irrigation systems, extraction of groundwater, in competing uses of land for forestry, then agriculture, pastures, human settlements and industries exert an enormous pressure on the country's finite land resources. Now this paragraph, this is actually the core concept. Okay, the per capita forest land in the country is only 0.06 hectare against the requirement of 0.47 hectare to meet the basic needs, resulting in an excess falling out of 15 million cubic meter forest over the permissible limit. Estimates of soil erosion show that the soil being eroded at a rate of 5.3 billion tons a year for the entire country, as a result of which country loses 0.8 million tons of nitrogen, 1.8 million tons of phosphorus, 26.3 million tons of potassium every year. Okay, And here also in this paragraph I missed this out. India supports approximately 17% of the world's human and 20% of the livestock population in a mere 2.3% of the world's geographical area. Okay, and this can lead to overexploitation, overutilization of the land. Okay, and in India, air pollution is widespread. Now we are looking at air pollution. It's widespread in urban areas where vehicles are major contributors, and in a few other areas which have a high concentration of industries and thermal power plants. All these aspects we are looking at the current state of our environment in our country. Okay, the number of motor vehicles have increased from about 3 lakhs in 1951 to 30 crores in 2019. In 2016, personal transport vehicles, that is two-wheelers and cars, only constituted about 85% of the total number of registered vehicles, thus contributing significantly to total air pollution load. Okay, and India is one of the 10 most industrialized nations in the world, but the status has brought with it unwanted and unanticipated consequences such as unplanned urbanization, pollution, and risk of accidents. Okay, now we will look at the third aspect, that is sustainable development. Environment and economy are interdependent and need each other. Hence, development that ignores its repercussions on the environment will destroy the environment, thus that sustains life forms. What is needed is sustainable development that will allow all future generations to have a potential average quality of life that is at least as high as that which is being enjoyed by the current generation. The concept of sustainable development is emphasized by United Nations Conference of Environment and Development, okay, which defined it as development that meets the need of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Okay, and there are also various sustainable goals. For this we will look into it. It's over here. The UN formulated 17 sustainable development goals intended to be achieved by the year 2030. Okay, I'll share with you the sustainable goals now. So the 17 sustainable goals are no poverty, no hunger. The third one is good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. Now renewable energy is there, good jobs and economic growth, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities. We have responsible consumption, then we have climate action, then life below water and life on land. This attributes to the marine life, this attribute to the animal life. Now we have 16th goal is the peace and justice and partnership for the goals. You can elaborate on these goals as well. Whenever question arises on environment related questions on mains, you can quote this SDG goals, sustainable development goals, as reference that according to UN there are certain goals that are to be met in certain areas. According to climate action is one of the SDG goals under the UN. We can quote that. Such kind of references are useful in mains. So coming back to our chapter strategies, now we are looking at the strategies for sustainable development. Okay, first one is use of non-conventional sources of energy. Okay, what are non-conventional sources? Is hugely India as a whole, as you know, is hugely dependent on the thermal and hydropower plants to meet its power needs. Both of these have adverse environmental impacts. Thermal power emits large quantities of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. It also produces fly ash, which, if not used properly, can cause pollution of water bodies, land, and other components of the environment. Now, when we look at hydroelectric projects, inundate forest and interfere with the natural flow of water in catchment areas and the river basins. Wind power and solar rays are good examples of conventional energy sources. Okay, in recent years, some efforts have been taken to tap these energy resources Okay. Now we look at, in the case of India, we have LPG, gobar gas in rural areas. Households in rural areas generally use wood, dung cake or cow dung cakes, and other biomass as fuel. This practice has several adverse implications like deforestation, reduction in green cover, wastage of cattle dung, and air pollution. To rectify the situation, subsidized LPG is being provided. Okay, and in addition to that, we have seen the scheme, I forgot the name of the scheme, in which the LPG cylinders are provided to every single household. Okay, in addition to gobar gas with subsidies. Okay, in addition, gobar gas plants are being provided through easy loans and subsidy. As far as liquefied petroleum gas is concerned, it is a clean fuel and it reduces household pollution to a large extent. Also, energy wastage is minimized. For the gobar gas plant to function, cattle dung is fed into the plant and gas is produced, which is used as fuel, while the slurry which is left is very good organic fertilizer and soil conditioner. Now, CNG, compressed natural gas, in urban areas. In Delhi, the use of CNG, compressed natural gas, as fuel is in public transport system has significantly lower air pollution and the air has become somewhat cleaner. In the last few years, many Indian cities also began to use CNG. Now we look at wind power. In areas where speed of wind is usually high, windmills can provide electricity without any adverse impact on the environment. Wind turbines move with the wind and electricity is generated. No doubt, the initial cost is high, but the benefits are such that the high cost gets easily absorbed. Okay, now we look at solar power, power through photovoltaic cells. Okay, India is naturally endowed with large quantities of solar energy in the form of sunlight. We use it in different ways. For example, we dry our clothes, grains, other agricultural products, as well as various items made for daily use. Okay, plants use solar energy to perform photosynthesis. All these natural aspects are there. Now, with the help of photovoltaic cells, solar energy can be converted into electricity. These cells use special kind of materials to capture solar energy and then convert the energy into electricity. Okay, and this in recent years, India is making efforts to increase the power generation through solar. India is also leading an international body called International Solar Alliance. Okay, so that organization is so important because India is leading that international body. Okay, now many hydel plants are there. Other aspect is traditional knowledge practices that we need to focus on Ayurveda, natural healthcare, and more dependent on our environment for our basic needs. All these aspects are to be looked into it, which are traditional ways that are that existed in our society. Okay, now biocomposting in which we collect the waste from our homes and it is mixed with the soil and forms a compost. At times, worms or earthworms are introduced to convert the organic matter and compost faster, and it forms vermicompost. And this compost is used for what? Is used as fertilizer. Okay, now biopest control. Like we used most of the time in our agriculture sector, we use chemical pesticides in order to ward off certain pests. Okay, in spite of that, in order to tackle that situation, these chemical pesticides have adverse environmental impacts. Okay, negative impacts on environment. So in order to tackle that, we can use different kind of natural pesticides, plant-based products. Neem trees are used for neem trees being used quite useful. Several type of pest controlling chemicals that has been isolated from neem, and these can be used. Mixed cropping and growing different crops in consecutive areas in the same land have also helped the farmers. So all these aspects are there which can contribute largely for sustainable development. So recap. Environment performs four functions: supplies resources, assimilates wastes, sustains life by providing genetic and biodiversity, and provides aesthetic services. Population explosion, affluent consumption, and production have placed a huge stress on the environment. Developmental activities in India have put immense pressure on its finite natural resources, besides creating impact on human health and well being. The threat of India's environment is of two dimensions: threat to poverty induced environmental degradation, and the threat of pollution from affluence and a rapidly growing industrial sector. Though the government, through various measures, attempts to safeguard the environment, it is also necessary to adopt a path of sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that meets the need of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Promotion of natural resources, conservation, preserving regenerative capacity of ecological system, and avoiding the imposition of environmental risk on future generation would lead to sustainable development. So these are basically the points that we have discussed so far. So I hope today's lecture was productive for you guys. Until we meet again, God bless you all. Jai Hind.